Decisions, decisions. What a dilemma. We've all been here. It's cold and it's wet outside. We know we really should go for a ride, but all we can be bothered to do is flop out on the sofa with a cup of tea and a packet of hobnobs. Yeah, we try and kid ourselves that we'll make up for it again tomorrow, but before we know it, 4 months have passed, it's January, and your fitness is back to square one, yet again. It's not unusual to lack motivation to ride your bike in the wintertime, but what you probably don't realise is that the reasons behind it are far deeper than you think. Basically, we're all still cavemen. And back 20,000 years ago, when we really did live in caves and we had to go and hunt and gather our food, it made perfect sense to try and save as much energy as possible in the wintertime when food was scarce. Now, 20,000 years may sound like a long time, but in human being terms, it's not. And we still have that caveman thing very deep inside us. Knowing that is all fine and dandy, but how do we actually do something about it? Well, as many of us already know, sometimes the hardest part of any ride is just getting out the front door, sitting on the bike and doing the first couple of 100 meters. Once you've overcome that hurdle, it all starts to become a lot more fun, and you can calm your inner caveman down by making that as easy as possible. Now, there are various ways of doing this. The first thing you need to do is start preparing your bike and just make sure that it's roadworthy, so the tyres are all pumped up, your computer's fully charged, all of that sort of thing. And then the last thing you want to do is start hunting around the house for your winter clothing. So make sure that that's all laid out, you know where it is, and it's easy to hand. Another thing you can do is have a set time for your ride. So if you say to yourself, today at 11 o'clock, I'm going to go out and ride, you're more likely to stick to it. And sometimes it also helps having just a general schedule. Probably the main thing that puts most of us off is the weather. I mean, who wants to go out and ride in the cold, the wet and the wind? Now, these days, there really is no excuse for that because we all have weather apps on our phone. We have access to the internet and meteorological websites, and I'm sure it's possible to find even a small gap in the weather when you can go out and do a few kilometers. And if the weather genuinely is so bad you can't go out, then why not do a turbo session or even take a rest day? And if you do take a day off, then don't make the mistake of trying to chase your losses. Just let it go and move on. If, like me, having to get dressed in all the layers that you need in the wintertime kind of puts you off, then why not start with the simple things first? I might begin by putting my heart rate sensor on, and then 10 minutes later I'll put my socks on, and then 5 minutes after that I might put my cycling shorts on, and then so on and so on and so on. And before I know it, I'm fully dressed to go out and do a ride. And it just seems a bit silly to sit around drinking tea on the sofa, fully dressed in your cycling kit, and then not go for a ride. For me personally, one of the things that really puts me off is thinking that I have to go out and do a long, hard ride. But telling myself that I only need to do a 5 or a 10 kilometer ride is always going to be far more appealing than thinking that I have to do a 50 kilometer ride. And similarly, it's okay to go out and ride a flat, easy route rather than putting pressure on yourself to go out and ride a tough, hilly one. When you do go out, you don't have to push yourself too hard either. You can take things nice and easy, or if you prefer and you're one of the cool kids, you can ride in zone 2. And if you need a breather from time to time, it's okay to stop and do that. And if it does get a bit too hard, you should give yourself the permission to cut the ride short. And of course, you need to make the ride as fun and as appealing as possible. And you can do this by doing things like riding with friends, arranging a cafe stop, or riding an interesting route. Setting a longer term target for your winter fitness is great, but it's important to make those targets fairly achievable. This time of year, it's all about getting the wins, no matter how small. Setting ambitious targets and not achieving them will only demotivate you further. chances are you're not an elite racer, so it's not the end of the world if you do lose a bit of fitness over the winter. In fact, I would say it's pretty inevitable. I'd even go as far as saying that maintaining peak fitness indefinitely is pretty much impossible. What you want to do is aim to maintain a steady base level of fitness so that when you get to the spring and summer, you can get back to peak fitness, whatever that means, fairly quickly. The thing to remember here though is that come January, 4 months of long-term consistent riding, no matter how short or how easy those rides were, is always going to give you a much better level of fitness than 4 months of infrequent, intense riding. So that's all the things you can do on a practical level, but there's one more tip that will really supercharge your winter motivation. And if you want to find out what that is, then click on the video just here. Thanks for watching.